I'm Wesley Walls, and I hope you're watching the Cat Cave.
Whether you're in North or South Carolina or anywhere else in the world, enter the Cat Cave with Ryan Frick and Shannon Smith to listen to your favorite Carolina Panthers podcast as part of the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, where you can find shows like Embrace Debate and Inside the Vault, powered by the Fans First Sports Network, and also over on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel, where you can also watch Believe in Panthers with Desmond Johnson and Carolina Panthers great Jonathan Stewart. What's up? Welcome back to the Cat Cave. Another week, more of the same. Shannon, how's it going, bud?
It's going good, man. You're absolutely right. More of the same. So here we go.
Well, let's go ahead and just get into it. The Carolina Panthers lose on the road once again, this time to the Denver Broncos. The score's a lot more respectable than the game actually was. 28-14. Panthers lose here. We talked about it on the show last week. Bryce Young got the start after Andy Dalton injured his throwing thumb, or the thumb on his throwing hand, in a car accident last week. I believe Bryce Young was the third quarterback to throw for 200 yards on this defense. Outside of the interceptions, outside of a couple sacks that he took in this game, I mean, again, the score looks a lot closer than the game actually was. The Broncos led this game by 21 points very early in this contest and basically held it until the very end. I've got something a little more like frustrating about this game that has nothing to do with how bad the Carolina Panthers are. So, Shannon, I'm going to turn it over to you. What did you think about, or what were your thoughts when watching this game?
You know, it was I got duped a little bit because that first drive, Carolina actually looked really, really good. Bryce marched down the field and throws a touchdown. It was 7-0. And then after that, 21 unanswered points later, it looked like it was just same old, same old. I mean, there was miscues on offense. There was defense had trouble. Like, defense actually had a pretty good stand at one point in time. Like, the first parts of the game, I mean, it's just, I don't know what it is. I think this team, it's kind of like a team like the team lacks stamina. It's like, oh, you begin great. All begins wonderfully. Yeah, you know, they get down the field, they score, or they have a good drive on defense. And then after that, it's just like the bottom falls out. And I don't know what it is. It just seems very, very frustrating. I wanted this win because, to be honest with you, I don't really like the Broncos. They're a squad that I have come to not like, especially after last year with what they're doing with Russ. I get why they wanted to move on from Russ, but how they did it was messed up. And then, you know, Sean Payton, he's just that, I don't know. It's just something about him that just gets on my nerves. And I don't like the way that he carries himself. And it's evident in his teams that he coaches. And it's kind of odd. But all in all, just to put a cap on this here, Carolina got the trash time touchdown. That's why it doesn't look as bad as it sounds. But there was miscues on offense, miscues on defense. We had trouble in the second half moving the ball. Then after that, the bottom fell out. Bo Nix looked like he was Pro Bowl bound. And then Patrick Surtain with the pick as well, too. You know, he's a very good cover corner, just like his father. But it's just, to me, just miscues all around. And Denver looked like they were a better squad than what they really were.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Chuba Hubbard couldn't really get the ball going on the ground in this game. 15 carries, 56 yards. That's only good for 3.7 yards per carry. Need to fix that on the scroller here because he did not score a touchdown. I will tell you, though, with all these rookies that Carolina has right now, there's one guy that is not getting the respect I think he deserves, and that's Jalen Coker.
Yes.
This wide receiver, 4 catches, 78 yards, and a touchdown in this game. Feels like every single week he makes some sort of miraculous catch. And listen, I'm not going to count my chickens before they hatch. But Amon-Ra St. Brown was, for the Detroit Lions, felt like he was disrespected because of all these different wide receivers that were drafted over him. I'm sure Jalen Coker feels that disrespect, especially considering Xavier Legette, who also scored a touchdown in this game, was drafted ahead of him, and maybe he feels like he was better than that, right? So a name to look out for going forward is Jalen Coker. But listen, you kind of stepped on my toes a little bit, unintentionally, because I want to take a second to talk about Sean Payton. I think Sean Payton is how do I say this without coming off like a total like dork? I don't want to say that he's the worst coach in the NFL, but like not in the sense of like he's a bad coach, but like he's the worst. Okay, like the Broncos were up 21 points, and this joker is faking punts. This joker is faking field goals, trying to run up the score. After the game, J.C. Horn went and let him have it on the field. And he kind of put us, what do you mean? What do you mean? And I think he even said in an interview a couple days later, like, learn how to stop us. Like, okay, if you're running a regular offense, I get it. If you're running up the score like the Miami Dolphins did on y'all last year, dropping 70 points on y'all sorry behinds, that's running up the score. Like, that's okay, stop us. But you've got a one-win team in town, and you're running fake punts and fake field goals, and you're running all these different trick plays to try to run up the score. Like, and I think even Dave Canales came out after the game and defended him and said, listen, they were just trying to hold on to the ball. They were just trying to control the clock and eat the clock so that we have a chance to score again. And I think Sean Payton, said the same thing, something along the lines of, I've been down 28 points in the fourth quarter and lost. Well, that's an inclination of your coaching ability then, sir. And that would explain why you're doing it. But listen, the Carolina Panthers aren't going to win a division. The Carolina Panthers are going to have a top 5 to top 10 pick in this coming year's NFL draft. So for Sean Payton to come out and try to defend himself, learn how to just stop us, play better defense is absolutely ridiculous. Let's not forget, this is the same head coach that was suspended from the NFL for an entire year because he was caught basically leading I'm so heated I can't think of the word. He was leading a movement for his team in New Orleans to hurt the players of opposing teams.
Oh yeah.
You forget about Bountygate. I don't know how we do, because if I'm not mistaken, I believe Bountygate is probably the reason why the Minnesota Vikings didn't make the Super Bowl when Brett Favre was their quarterback.
Yep.
Because they deliberately went after Brett Favre in that game, and I think that was the most obvious example of that. But Sean Payton was in charge of Bountygate. He had to go away for a year and watch his actually spend time with his family. Oh, God forbid Sean Payton had to get away and spend time with his family. Like the lack of taste by the choices that Sean Payton made in this game goes to show like how much. And again, I don't know like what words are going to be frowned upon. I'm going to try not to use bad words, but like the plays that he called in this game just goes to show how much of a douchebag Sean Payton is. And so much to the point, like, listen, if he didn't do it to the Carolina Panthers, if it was the Tennessee Titans and he was running these trick plays, like, I don't know if I say the Titans because they're probably the second to third worst team in the NFL who just got backed by the Lions. And I don't remember the Lions doing a fake punt or a fake field goal in that game when they were up big. I mean, they ran some trickeration against Dallas, but that's a different story. That was a point-proving game. But like, if the Titans came into town and the Denver Broncos were running fake punts and fake field goals, and they were trying to, like, again, the whole point is like, oh, learn how to stop us. Like, that a fake field goal and a fake punt is not your typical drive extending plays that you would normally see in an NFL game. And the other argument that I've heard about this is, oh, it's the NFL, like, just play better. Like, to an extent, I get it. But it shows a lack of class and a lack of character. And the way that you said, the way that you mentioned of how they treated Russell Wilson on his way out the door last year, it kind of speaks to that too. So I do want to say this. When you say I don't really like the Broncos, like, after sort of like looking at the history of some of the players in the NFL, like, again, you watch all these documentaries and different like game films and stuff like that. And so you see the story behind John Elway and how he didn't want to play for the Colts. And if they didn't trade him, he was going to go play baseball. And so he forced his way out of Indianapolis, which, listen, at the same time, like, I can't be a hypocrite and say that I didn't like that move and then say that I was okay with Eli Manning's move, because I didn't like what Eli did either. Difference is that Eli became a likable guy afterwards. I don't know if John Elway was ever really likable. At least in my opinion, he never has been. And seeing as he continues to run the organization, and since John Elway, outside of the signing of Peyton Manning, they haven't really had consistency at the quarterback. I don't know if Bo Nix does this for them. I don't really care, because I'll root against specifically Sean Payton until the day Sean Payton is back on some Sunday morning NFL pregame show that nobody watches, because it was garbage. I wanted to come on the show and rant about it, not as a Panthers homer, but as a fan of football. Like, it's not cool. Like, I get it. If you're like the Miami Dolphins did to the Broncos last year, or what the Lions did to the Titans this week, or what the Saints did to the Panthers earlier in the season. The Saints absolutely shellacked Carolina in New Orleans, and they didn't have to run fake punts to do it, right? Mm-hmm. So I hope that Sean Payton stubs a different toe every time he enters a different room until maybe he loses. I don't want to say he loses his foot, but like legitimately, I have nothing positive to say. And I'm sure that people around the league and people that work for him and people that have played for him, they all love Sean Payton, right? Drew Brees loves Sean Payton. He's a Super Bowl champion. But Sean Payton can kick rocks now and forever, as far as I'm concerned. And if you like Sean Payton, then you can kick rocks too. That's the way I feel about it. Mm-hmm. Shannon, I'm sorry, I had to get on my soapbox for a minute because
I get it, because like you were saying, it's like this. There's a difference between you got to have class, and there's no class there. He's not a class guy. He really never has been, and it's evident in how he runs his team. When he left the Saints, you brought that up, Bounty Gate. The way he left the Saints, he went out. And, when he went and they played in New Orleans, there was mixed emotions when he went there. A lot of those teams were like, yeah, he won us a Super Bowl, okay. And he got us some prominence with the football team, okay. But how he left out was what they had a problem with. And the way he left out like a chump. He really did. He left out basically blaming everyone and blaming other people and not really taking accountability. It was one of those things where it just was like, okay, you can go. Then he talked about, I don't want to coach another team besides New Orleans or anything else in between. And then 2 years later, he goes to Denver, and now he's got whatever he's got in Denver, and there you have it. And so, but I had an issue with that as well too, because I looked at that and I saw that as well too.
Who's the more unlikable coach, Rex Ryan or Sean Payton?
Wow. Whoa. Wow.
Yeah.
You know what? I mean, in my opinion, and this is just my humble opinion right here, I got to go with Sean Payton on this one. One thing I can say about Rex Ryan that I think a lot of people probably agree with is that Rex Ryan told you what he was. And you knew what Rex Ryan was. You knew that's how he was. You knew he was going to be that way. Sean Payton tries to hide it in a way, and I don't really like that. If you're going to be that type of coach, if you're going to be that type of human being, then let people know that. I actually can watch Rex Ryan on Sunday Countdown on ESPN and actually be like, all right, cool. And I can see him on ESPN and be like, you know what? He's right. I can dig that.
He's got some redeeming qualities, something that Sean Payton doesn't have.
Right. And Sean Payton doesn't have that.
Shannon, let's move on here because something big happened this week with the Carolina Panthers. On Tuesday, it was announced that Dionte Johnson has now been traded to the Baltimore Ravens, along with a pick swap. So essentially, when the Carolina Panthers traded for Dionte Johnson from the Pittsburgh Steelers, they gave up, and I should have written it down because I can't think of his name. Traded away a defensive back and a 7th rounder to get the Pittsburgh Steelers 6th rounder and Dionte Johnson. And now they have flipped Dionte Johnson and a 6th round pick to the Baltimore Ravens for a 5th rounder. So essentially, they traded, and again, I'm so mad. If Des was on the show, he'd be able to pop it out right here. Traded away a defensive back and a 7th round pick to get a 5th round pick in return. Shannon, what are your thoughts? I mean, I think we both agreed that we didn't want to see Dionte Johnson go. I think we said if you're going to build around something, like keep the core offense intact. And I know Dionte Johnson has dealt with some injuries this year, but he's also been the most consistent producer on this offense, not named Chuba Hubbard. What are your thoughts on the Carolina Panthers' decision to trade Dionte Johnson?
It's a tank job. I think we all can agree this is a sign of tank. This is a sign of tanking for the first pick. Yes, Dionte Johnson was actually a receiver he was a number one, and he was a number one receiver on the squad. That's what he was brought in to be. He was brought in to be either number one or number two in regards to a healthy Adam Thielen. And Adam Thielen has been hurt. And so with that being said, he was the number one, and he was supposed to be the number one. And sadly, that didn't happen. So that was the only bad part about it that I hated. It was just that, man, he had to go. So, yeah.
Yeah, listen, I didn't want to see I didn't want to see Dionte Johnson go. I mean, listen, Adam Thielen might come back this week. But like you said, Johnson was brought in to be the X, right? Like you're putting Thielen in the slot, might have Leggett over on the other side as the wide receiver 2. Now you don't know who's going to be wide receiver 1. Adam Thielen's quintessential like specific spot on the offense is in the slot. So I'm assuming you're going to have Xavier Leggett line up at the wide receiver 1 now. Because I think it's safe to say that Jonathan Mingo isn't working out. Just as much as people could argue that Bryce Young isn't working out. But like, I just I don't know how to feel about it because they basically got rid of a 7th and traded their way up to a 5th round pick. But like, is that really that much better? Like after about the 2nd or 3rd round, all the talent you're getting in that draft is a crapshoot. I mean, Brock Purdy, Tom Brady, 7th round picks. Russell Wilson was a 3rd round pick. So like it's sort of a crapshoot on what you're getting after that 3rd round. And I don't know if it was worth it to lose. And I'm just going to drive me nuts not knowing who that defensive back was that we traded away to get Dionte Johnson. But I feel like it's more of a waste of time.
And what has to be understood is that, even if you do get a Brock Purdy or a Tom Brady in the draft, those are like once in a lifetime. And you're not going to get those every year. There's going to be maybe 1 or 2 guys that are going to come out of that and be like, oh, okay, we can build off that. Like a Marcus Colston. There's going to be a Marcus Colston in the draft somewhere. There's going to be somebody who is going to be like turning the heads of other people. Like, oh, man, how did we not draft this guy? So, I mean, it's going to happen. But, I would much rather hang my hat on the fact that, hey, I actually have a 1st rounder or a 2nd rounder that I think I might be able to build a franchise on instead of just looking at a 5th or a 6th and be like, okay, I'm going to do it with him and it may or may not happen. It's a coin flip. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you mentioned that you feel like it's a tank job, except the Carolina Panthers have come out and said publicly they're not trying to make a bunch of other moves in that sort of tank mentality. They're not looking to make moves like getting rid of Bryce Young or an injured Shaq Thompson. J.C. Horn was being rumored to be shopped. I think I've said it on this show in the past that I think that it's time to cut Miles Sanders loose. Find a trade. I mean, if you're going to get a 5th rounder for Dionte Johnson, you could probably get a 4th for Miles Sanders. I mean, you've got teams like Kansas City, Baltimore, and others loading up right now. I think they said it on the radio earlier today. It's a buyer's market. So you can probably go and get like a 4th rounder for Miles Sanders to a team like, let's say, like Kansas City, like the Dallas Cowboys, who can't get a run game going. Maybe like the New York Giants, who haven't really been able to get the ball moving on the ground, who consistently struggle offensively. I mean, I know the Panthers have said they're not making any other moves, but is there anybody you think the Panthers should eye potentially moving before the trade deadline next week?
I mean, looking at that,
The dejected head shake just got me.
I mean, look at. I mean, my thing is, who have you got to give? That's what I'm looking at. Who have you got to give? Because more or less, you're trading off a possibility, and we don't know. Like when they talk about maybe unloading Bryce Young, we don't know what we're gonna get out of Bryce Young. You don't know. Well, I mean, he could be Sam Darnold if you put him in the right place, or he could be himself here in Carolina in another spot. We don't know. We've had a small serving size. Well, other teams have had a small serving size of what Bryce Young could do, what Miles Sanders could do. They've had small serving sizes. So that to me is what I just want to. That's what I'm wondering. Who is it there that anybody would want?
Do you think there's a chance that Mingo is so far buried on the depth chart that the Panthers can move yet another wide receiver and find a way to let go? Like, think about a team like the Houston Texans, who Nico Collins is on IR, Stephon Diggs just tore his ACL, and so they basically got Tank Dell, and I think their tight end is Dalton Schultz in Houston right now, but that's all the pass catchers that I know. Is there a chance that the Texans are like, listen, Carolina didn't do right by Bryce Young. Everybody's thinking that it was CJ Stroud. Maybe they're not working, Jonathan Mingo right. Maybe do you think there's someone like Houston Texans that can come who needs some wide receiver depth and try to see what they can give away to go get a guy like Mingo?
After this week, we'll see, because I mean they're going without both their targets this week, and Tank Dell is the only guy that they have. So it would be telling this week is what it would be, because trade deadline ends. What is it?
It's next week. Next week.
Yeah. So we'll have to see, because they'll probably bring it down to the wire and see, because I mean they should be getting Nico back maybe in another 2 weeks, I believe. I think he's supposed to be off IR in another 2 or 3 weeks. So it depends. They may drag it down to the wire.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll be interested to see if the Panthers make any more moves going up, heading up to the trade deadline. I mean, there's teams that have went out and got Cam Robinson from the Jags was just traded to, who was it that got Cam Robinson? The Seahawks? I don't remember who it was. Seattle. Okay, I was right. How about that? And Seattle also made a move to go get linebacker Ernest Jones from the Tennessee Titans. So the Seahawks are making moves, man. Like with that division sort of in flux, with all the injuries to San Francisco and the inconsistency with Arizona, who just knocked off Tua Tagovailoa returns, Miami Dolphins. You've got the Rams, who you don't know what you're going to get week to week, but now they've got Puka and Cooper Kupp back, so they seem to be a formidable opponent. You've got teams that want to make a splash, and they want to compete this year. And I think the Carolina Panthers are pretty much, decided that it's not going to happen. Speaking of which, they get a rematch from the Week 1 beatdown that they were served at the hands of the New Orleans Saints. Unfortunately for the Saints, after they beat down the Panthers and the Cowboys in Week 2, they haven't done much either. And unfortunately for a South Carolina homer like myself, when Derek Carr went down, Spencer Rattler came in and took over the reins for the New Orleans Saints. He hasn't really done much. The Saints have not won a game since Week 2, but somehow, some way, they come into Charlotte, a 7.5-point favorite this Sunday, as the 2-6 Saints take on the 1-7 Carolina Panthers. A 1:00 game over on CBS. Shannon, do the Panthers do the unthinkable and cover this nearly 8-point spread after getting beat down by the same Saints squad back in Week 1?
I think they'll bring it close, considering the fact that the Saints have had trouble on offense. I still don't think Derek Carr is back. I don't believe.
No, I think Rattler's getting another start.
So Rattler's going to be starting, and that's the only thing that scares me, that should scare them about playing the Panthers, because the under the offensive end, and Alvin Kamara has not really done much in the past few weeks. But I think that Carolina will cut it closer than what they did in Week 1. And so that's not really saying much. But I think they'll cut it close than they did Week 1. It'll probably be, I would say, it will be like this week, kind of like, a 14-point win, because the Saints really don't impress me that much.
I mean, in fairness, Derek Carr, if you look at fantasy football projections, Derek Carr does have a projection. So there's a chance that he is back this week. To your point, I don't think it's another 40 point beatdown. But I still think the Saints cover this, unfortunately. Again, at the end of the day, I know the Panthers are getting healthier. Adam Thielen may be back this week. We had a bunch of guys return last week. DJ Wanham is a week closer to coming back. Is it Josie Jewell that's a week closer to coming back? There's a bunch of guys that are close to coming back. Jadeveon Clowney returned to the field last week. So they're getting healthy, but at the end of the day, I just don't think the team is all that good, unfortunately. And so I like the Saints to cover, but not as bad as they did back in week 1. Folks, that's the show for this week. If you want to follow Shannon over on social media, he is on X and Instagram at podcast_Smitty. If you want to follow me on social media, I am on X at Tapouts and TDs, on Facebook.com/tapouts and touchdowns, on Instagram over on at Ryan Frick Comedy. Make sure you follow the Cat Cave on social media as well. Facebook.com/the Cat Cave FFSN, and on Instagram and X at the Cat Cave _FFSN. Now, I will not be here next week. I leave Friday to go on a Caribbean cruise at the same time that there is a weather system building in the Caribbean. So I may be somebody might be kicking me off of a door a la the Titanic, because even though there's room for two of us, I'm big as two of us as big as two of us to get on a door. So listen, I will not be here this next week. But Shannon, I believe, will be doing it TBD. But I will not be here next week, so you will not get to hear me complain about whatever the Saints do to the Carolina Panthers next week. You get a reprieve from your guy, as I say on Tap House and Touchdowns, Bully Rye. But until then, at least for this afternoon, this evening, this morning, whenever you're listening to the show, you may now exit the Cat Cave. But make sure to listen to more content on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel, and more Carolina Panthers themed podcast on the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, powered by the Fans First Sports Network. For Shannon Smith, I'm Ryan Frick, and we'll see you next week right back here inside the Cat Cave.